All right, let's get right into it. The whole crypto market, it feels like it's just falling off a cliff, right? Everything is red. But what if I told you there's this tiny group of coins that aren't just surviving, they're absolutely pumping? So in this explainer, we're going to figure out how 5 specific cryptos are basically defying gravity and what in the world is fueling this insane rise.
And this chart, this just says it all. You've got the big guys, Bitcoin and Ethereum, taking an absolute beating. But then look at this other bar. The average gain of the 5 coins we're about to talk about is over 50%. This isn't just a little blip. It's like they're living in a completely different reality.
So, naturally, that leads to the big question, right? What on earth do these coins have in common? This can't just be luck, and it's not just some random story popping off. There's a very specific financial engine humming away in the background. And that engine, it has a fancy name. It's called Rehypothecation. This is it. This is the secret sauce behind the pump. It's the mechanism creating all this leverage demand and just sending these coins to the moon, while pretty much everything else is crashing and burning. Okay, so what is rehypothecation? It sounds super complicated, I know, but trust me, the idea is actually pretty simple. Imagine you post some collateral to get a loan. You'd think it just sits there in a vault, right? Well, with rehypothecation, the lender takes that collateral and puts it back to work. Maybe they lend it out to someone else or they invest it. It's a way of using the same asset multiple times over. And this is where it gets really powerful. It creates what's called a rehypothecation loop. You can see it here. Step 1, you deposit your crypto. Step 2, you borrow another crypto against it. But here's the kicker. Step 3, you can take what you just borrowed, maybe swap it for more of that first crypto, and deposit it again for another loan. You just keep repeating this, creating layer upon layer of leverage. That's the engine. Okay, so now that we get the theory, let's look at the actual players here, the 5 coins that seem to have mastered this engine. We're going to go through them one by one and see exactly how they're using this loop to get these incredible gains. And here they are, the whole crew: Zcash, STRK, Decred, Dash, and Internet Computer. Just look at those numbers. We're talking anywhere from almost 60% all the way up to a mind-boggling 149%. And notice something else? They each have a really strong, clear story: privacy, payments, governance. That narrative is a huge piece of the puzzle. First up is Zcash with an absolutely insane 149% gain. No, that is not a typo. While the rest of the market was a bloodbath, ZEC more than doubled. So why? What's the deal? Well, it's a trifecta. First, the whole idea of privacy and censorship resistance is having a major moment. Second, and this is the really critical part, people are using Zeke like crazy as collateral in these DeFi rehypothecation loops. And third, it has what's called a low float, which just means there isn't a ton of it available to trade. That scarcity means all this leverage buying has a massive impact on the price. Next, we've got STRK, or STRK, rocketing up over 86%, another absolute monster that's just playing a different game than the rest of the market. STRK's pump is getting a lot of attention because of its real-world use for payments in Latin America. But again, you gotta look under the hood. It's being looped like crazy in stablecoin yield strategies. People deposit STRK, borrow stablecoins, and go chase those juicy yields. And all of this is getting poured fuel on the fire by people speculating it could be the next XRP. Okay, number 3 on our outlier list is Decred, ticker DCR, clocking in with a really solid 77% gain. This one is carving out a pretty unique space for itself. Now, Decred's angle is really interesting. It's being staked and looped inside the treasuries and governance vaults of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Basically, DAOs are using it as leverage capital to run their communities. Its whole story as this resilient anti-censorship asset that doesn't just follow Bitcoin's every move makes it a super attractive piece of collateral to loop. And now for a name you probably recognize making a huge comeback, Dash, up over 60%. This is one of the OG coins, but it's got a whole new lease on life. So, a bit like STRK, Dash's strength is its real-world use for payments. But, sound familiar? That leverage engine is just humming away in the background. Dash is being rehypothecated inside merchant liquidity pools where it's used to make transactions happen fast. That utility is fueling this powerful narrative of the OG coin with new life, and that's pulling in a ton of new capital. And rounding out our top 5, we have Internet Computer, or ICP. with an awesome gain of nearly 60%. This project is all about building the next version of the internet. So ICP's whole story is about becoming the world's decentralized cloud. And as more developers start building on it, more capital comes in. But the price action is getting a huge boost because ICP is being looped inside what they call compute and staking vaults. You can basically think of these as pools where you stake ICP to get the power to run your apps. And that staked ICP, you guessed it, it gets rehypothecated, creating that same powerful demand loop. Okay, so we've seen the what and the how, but now we get to the most important question. So what? What does this all actually mean, and how can you use this information? This looks like it could be a whole new market playbook. It's like the market is splitting into two different worlds. In one corner, you've got the giants like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they're just kind of consolidating, moving sideways. But in the other corner, you have these outliers. And for them, the winning formula seems to be the simple but incredibly powerful combo: a strong narrative plus real utility, supercharged by leverage. And the folks at Investment Underground who did this analysis, they put it perfectly. Quote, while BTC and ETH consolidate, these assets are riding narrative plus utility plus leverage. That's really the core idea here. It's the combination of all three of those things that creates this explosive potential. So what's the actual strategy here? Well, according to the source, it's about shifting where you're looking. First, get good at tracking these rehypothecation flows in DeFi. Second, look for assets that have great staking opportunities that can be looped. And finally, keep an eye out for those low-supply, low-float assets that have a really powerful and believable story behind them.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground, from this weird market mystery to the financial engine behind it all, and even a potential new playbook. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to really think about.
Look, this rehypothecation strategy is obviously incredibly powerful. It can create just massive gains. But all leverage, every single bit of it, is basically borrowing from the future. And it forces us to ask a really important question. When you build these complex towers of looped collateral in a game of leverage, who is ultimately left holding all the risk?